Have you ever opened a package that made you question everything you believed, even the death of someone you loved? By the time I understood what was inside that small black box sitting on my porch, someone had already been lying to me for almost 4 years. And before this story was over, someone was going to prison. If you've ever wanted to see justice catch up with someone who thought they'd gotten away with everything, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and stay until the end. Because today's story proves one thing. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. People say grief fades. They're wrong. It simply changes shape. For me, it became routine. Every morning I watered the flowers beside my daughter Emma's memorial picture. Every Sunday I visited her grave. Every birthday I bought her favorite white lilies, even though nobody was left to smell them. You don't stop being a father because your child dies. You simply become a father with nowhere to put your love. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 54 years old. For 30 years I worked as an electrical engineer, living a quiet life with my wife Laura in a peaceful neighborhood outside Denver. We had 2 children, our son Noah, who lived across the country, and our daughter Emma, the brightest person I'd ever known. She had inherited her mother's kindness and my stubbornness, a dangerous combination whenever she believed she was right. 3 years earlier, the police told us Emma had died in a single car accident on a mountain highway during heavy rain. Case closed. Driver error. Nothing suspicious. Everyone accepted it. Everyone, except me. I attended the funeral, shook hands, accepted condolences, pretended to believe the official report, but every night afterward, one question kept me awake. Why would Emma suddenly lose control on a road she'd driven hundreds of times? The answer never came. Life moved on for everyone else. Or at least it looked like it had. Laura buried herself in gardening. Noah disappeared into work. And I buried myself in silence. Until Father's Day. That Sunday started like every other. Coffee, newspaper, quiet house. Then Laura looked through the front window. Her face instantly drained of color. Daniel, her voice barely escaped her lips. Don't touch that. I stepped outside. A perfectly wrapped black gift box rested on the welcome mat. Silver ribbon. Neat handwriting. No shipping company logo I'd recognized. Just a small card. My hands began trembling before I'd even picked it up, because I already knew that handwriting. I had seen it on birthday cards, Christmas gifts, and every Father's Day for 26 years. The card read only 7 words. Happy Father's Day, Dad, love, Emma. The coffee mug slipped from my fingers. It shattered across the porch. My daughter had been dead for 3 years, and someone wanted me to believe she had just sent me a gift. For several long seconds, neither of us moved. The shattered coffee mug lay scattered across the porch, but neither Laura nor I looked at it. Our eyes were locked on the black gift box, as though it might suddenly move on its own. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Daniel, Laura whispered, her voice shaking. Please, don't open it. I swallowed hard, unable to pull my eyes away from the handwritten card. It wasn't just similar to Emma's handwriting. It was her handwriting. The rounded letters, the little flourish beneath the L in love, even the tiny heart she always drew above the A in Dad when she was feeling playful. Details nobody outside our family should have known. My fingers curled into fists. This has to be some kind of sick joke, I muttered. Laura grabbed my wrist before I could reach for the package. No, her grip was tighter than I'd felt in years. Something feels wrong. For the first time, I looked beyond the ribbon. The shipping label had been partially torn away. Whoever mailed it had tried to hide where it came from. Not completely. Just enough. Enough to make it impossible to trace at first glance. That wasn't a prank. That was planning. I pulled out my phone instead. What are you doing? Laura asked. Documenting everything. I photographed the box from every angle. The ribbon, the label, the handwriting, the porch, even the tire marks near the curb. Years of grief had taught me one thing. Memories fade. Photographs don't. When I finished, I called the only person I trusted. Michael? A sleepy voice answered. You know what time it is? I need you. Silence. Then his tone changed. What happened? Someone sent me a Father's Day gift. So? It says it's from Emma. The silence that followed felt endless. Michael wasn't just my oldest friend. He'd spent 25 years as a homicide detective before retiring. When he finally spoke, every trace of sleep had disappeared. Don't touch the package. I wasn't planning to. I'm on my way. He arrived 19 minutes later wearing jeans, an old leather jacket, and the expression of a man whose instincts had already gone to work. Without saying a word, he slipped on a pair of latex gloves and slowly circled the package. He crouched, studied the handwriting, examined the label through a small magnifying lens. What? This wasn't mailed by an amateur. Laura stepped closer. What do you mean? Michael pointed toward the torn shipping label. See these edges? I nodded. They weren't ripped by accident. They were peeled off deliberately. He looked up at me. Whoever sent this wanted you to know it came from Emma, but didn't want you knowing where it actually came from. A cold chill crept down my spine. So what do? We call the police. 10 minutes later, 2 patrol cars blocked off our street. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Children stood on bicycles at the end of the sidewalk. Within another half hour, the bomb squad arrived. Seeing officers treat a Father's Day gift like an explosive device made the entire situation feel even more unreal. Laura buried her face against my shoulder. What if it's nothing? I wrapped an arm around her. And what if it isn't? The technician carried the package behind a protective blast shield. Every second felt like an hour. Finally, the lid was lifted. No explosion, no smoke, no chemicals. Instead, the lead detective slowly reached inside. His face changed. He looked directly at me. Mr. Carter. His voice had become unusually careful. I think you're going to want to see what's inside. I took one hesitant step forward, and in that moment I had no idea that opening this box would reopen a case everyone believed had been buried forever. The detective carried the contents of the package to a folding table set up behind the blast shield. Every movement was slow, deliberate, almost respectful. I stood 20 feet away with Laura clutching my arm so tightly, my fingers had started to go numb. Can I come closer? I asked. The detective nodded. Carefully, I walked forward, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. Inside the box wasn't money. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even what I had expected. It was a framed photograph. The moment I saw it, my knees nearly gave out. It was Emma, 23 years old, standing on the dock at Pine Lake, laughing at something outside the frame. The afternoon sun lit up her face, and her long brown hair danced in the breeze. I had taken that picture. I remembered the exact day. She'd stolen my fishing hat, insisted on wearing it backward, and laughed so hard she almost fell into the water. It had always been my favorite photograph of her, but it had disappeared after her death. We searched everywhere. We assumed it had been lost during the funeral. Now, someone had mailed it back to me. Beneath the photograph lay a single folded sheet of cream-colored paper. The detective carefully unfolded it. His expression darkened. He looked at me before quietly handing it over. There are no fingerprints on it, he said. Whoever sent this knew exactly what they were doing. I unfolded the note with trembling hands. Only one sentence was written across the page. She tried to tell you the truth. Nothing else. No signature. No explanation. No demands. Just 7 words. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Laura covered her mouth to stop herself from crying. What truth? She whispered. I don't know. But deep inside, I had a feeling I already did. For 3 years, everyone had insisted Emma's death was an accident. 3 years of hearing people tell me to let go, move on, accept reality. Yet someone out there clearly believed she had been trying to reveal something before she died. Someone who had waited until Father's Day to reach out. Why now? The detective interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Carter, did your daughter have any enemies? I almost laughed. Emma made friends with strangers in grocery store lines. She volunteered at animal shelters. She remembered birthdays better than anyone I'd ever met. No. What about an ex-boyfriend? My jaw tightened. One face immediately surfaced in my mind. Ryan Whitmore, Emma's fiancé. Tall, confident, always smiling. The kind of smile that looked perfect until you looked into his eyes. I had never trusted him. Not because he was rude. Quite the opposite. He was almost too charming. Too polished, too careful. Like every conversation had been rehearsed before it happened. Emma used to defend him whenever I questioned his behavior. You're judging him too quickly, Dad. Maybe I had. Or maybe I hadn't judged him enough. The detective noticed my expression. You thought of someone. I nodded slowly. My daughter's fiancé. What makes him stand out? I hesitated. There wasn't any proof. Only memories. Little moments. Tiny cracks that hadn't made sense before. Ryan always insisted on knowing where Emma was. He hated when she spent time with friends. He constantly checked her phone. He discouraged her from visiting us too often. At the time, Emma called it concern. I had called it control. Now, those memories felt different. The detective scribbled his name into a notebook. We'll talk to him. I stared down at the photograph one last time. Something caught my eye. On the wooden dock behind Emma, barely visible in the background, was a reflection in the lake. A man. Standing farther back. Watching her. Watching us. His face couldn't be made out. Only his silhouette. I frowned. I don't remember anyone else being there that day. The detective leaned closer. Neither do I. He looked at me with renewed intensity. But I think we just found our first real clue. As he carefully placed the photograph into an evidence bag, a strange feeling settled over me. For 3 years I'd been searching for answers. Now the answers had started searching for me. I couldn't stop staring at the photograph. That shadow in the reflection wasn't just standing there. It was watching. Watching Emma. Watching me. Watching everything. The detective carefully sealed the picture inside an evidence bag before looking directly at me. Mr. Carter, I think it's time we reopened your daughter's case. Those words hit me harder than I expected. For 3 years I'd begged people to look closer. Now someone finally believed me. The following morning, I met Detective Rebecca Hayes at the county police headquarters. Unlike the officers I'd dealt with years ago, she didn't treat me like an emotional father chasing ghosts. She listened. Really listened. For nearly 3 hours. Every argument Emma had with Ryan. Every strange phone call. Every canceled family dinner. Every moment that had bothered me but never seemed important enough to mention. When I finally finished, she closed her notebook. I believe someone knows exactly what happened. You really think so? I don't think people send anonymous packages like this unless they're carrying guilt. Guilt? She nodded. Or fear. Meanwhile, Michael had started digging on his own. Retirement hadn't dulled his detective instincts. If anything, it had sharpened them. That afternoon he called. I found something. I drove straight to his office. Stacks of old newspapers, dusty filing cabinets, and crime scene photographs covered every inch of his desk. He slid a folder toward me. Recognize this? It was an old newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Local accountant promoted after company restructure." The photograph showed Ryan, smiling, wearing an expensive suit. The article had been published just 4 months after Emma's death. My stomach tightened. He moved up pretty fast. Michael nodded. Very fast. Too fast. He pulled another document from the folder. Guess who resigned from the company 2 weeks before your daughter's accident? I looked down. Emma Carter. What? She wasn't fired. She resigned. I frowned. She never told us. Exactly. Michael leaned back. People don't suddenly quit good jobs without a reason. Unless something had happened. 2 days later, Detective Hayes called. We found someone. Who? A former co-worker of Emma's. Will she talk? I don't know. Her name was Sophie Bennett. She lived nearly 40 miles away in a quiet apartment complex. She answered the door looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hands trembling before she'd even invited us inside. The detective introduced us. The moment Sophie saw Emma's photograph, she burst into tears. I've been waiting for this day. The room fell silent. Detective Hayes gently asked, What do you mean? Sophie wiped her eyes. I knew this would come back someday. I felt my heartbeat quicken. You knew what? She looked at me, then at Emma's picture, then back down at the floor. Emma found something she wasn't supposed to find. My breathing stopped. What? Financial records. What kind? Millions of dollars. The room suddenly felt much smaller. Sophie continued. Our company handled investment accounts. She swallowed. Emma discovered money disappearing through fake businesses. She thought it was accounting fraud. She confronted Ryan. I stared at her. Ryan worked there? She nodded. He managed internal audits. Everything inside me turned cold. What happened after she confronted him? Sophie hesitated. I begged her to stay quiet. She wouldn't. She said if innocent people were losing money, someone had to stop it. That sounded exactly like Emma. She had always believed doing the right thing mattered more than staying safe. What happened next? I whispered. Sophie looked directly into my eyes. The day before she died, Emma told me she had enough evidence to destroy Ryan. The room went silent. No one moved. No one breathed. Then Sophie said the sentence that changed everything. She also told me if anything happened to her, it would never be an accident. A wave of anger crashed through me. For 3 years, someone had known. Someone had stayed silent. Detective Hayes asked softly, "Why didn't you come forward?" Sophie began crying harder. "Because Ryan came to my apartment after the funeral." My blood froze. He smiled. He never threatened me. He simply said. She closed her eyes. "Accidents happen to people who ask too many questions." The silence that followed was unbearable. I slowly stood. Every piece of the puzzle was beginning to fit together. Ryan hadn't just hidden the truth. He'd spent 3 years making sure everyone else buried it too. And for the first time since Emma's death, I wasn't chasing suspicion anymore. I was chasing a killer. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Sophie's words again. "If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident." Emma had known. She'd seen the danger. She'd tried to expose it. And someone had silenced her forever. For 3 years, I'd lived with guilt, wondering if I had failed my daughter. Now that guilt had transformed into something far more dangerous. Determination. The next morning, Detective Rebecca Hayes called me into her office. She spread several files across the conference table. Financial statements, phone records, bank transfers, travel logs. "Ryan's life is starting to unravel," she said. I looked up. "What do you mean?" The anonymous tip triggered a full audit at his company. Michael had been right. Truth has a way of finding daylight. "He doesn't know we're investigating Emma's death," Rebecca continued. "But he knows someone is looking into his finances." I leaned forward. "And?" "He made 3 calls to an offshore attorney. He transferred nearly $500,000 between accounts. He also searched for countries without extradition treaties." I felt my jaw tighten. "He's preparing to run." Rebecca nodded. "That's exactly what we think." Michael looked at me. "People only run when they know they're guilty." Within 48 hours, Ryan's carefully constructed life began collapsing. His employer suspended him. His corporate email was disabled. His company-issued laptop was seized. Neighbors noticed federal investigators carrying boxes from his office. News spread quickly. Friends stopped calling. Business partners suddenly couldn't be reached. The perfect image Ryan had spent years building was cracking. But instead of panicking, he became desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. 3 days later, Detective Hayes received a warrant to search Ryan's home. I wasn't allowed inside. So I waited across the street with Michael. Every minute felt like an hour. Officers carried out computers, boxes of financial records, hard drives, locked filing cabinets. Then, one detective hurried outside carrying a small evidence bag. Rebecca walked directly toward us. Her expression told me everything. "We found something." "What?" She held up a silver flash drive. It was hidden inside the wall behind his home office bookshelf. Michael frowned. "Hidden?" Rebecca nodded. "Someone didn't want this found. The forensic team worked overnight. The following afternoon, Rebecca called us back. When she entered the room, she wasn't smiling. She simply connected a laptop to the conference room television. "Watch." A security camera recording appeared. The date caught my attention immediately. 6 days before Emma died. The footage showed Ryan entering a storage unit. He looked around repeatedly before unlocking the door. Then he carried in several cardboard boxes. 20 minutes later, he walked out carrying only one small notebook. Rebecca paused the video. "Recognize it?" I stared. Brown cover. Black spiral binding. My heart skipped. "It looks like Emma's notebook." Rebecca nodded. "We think so too." Michael leaned forward, so he removed something. Exactly, the next video was worse. Ryan sat alone in his office after business hours. He fed page after page through a paper shredder. His face never changed. No panic. No hesitation. Just cold efficiency. Rebecca froze the frame. Our forensic team recovered fragments from the shredder. She placed several reconstructed pages onto the table. Most were unreadable. Except one. Across the top, in Emma's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 chilling words. "Ryan knows I found everything." The rest had been destroyed. Laura began crying quietly beside me. I reached for her hand. For years she'd tried to believe the official story. because accepting murder was simply too painful. Now, there was no escaping it. That evening I sat alone on the back porch, the same place where Emma used to drink lemonade every summer. The empty chair across from me seemed louder than silence itself. I remembered teaching her to ride a bicycle, helping her with algebra homework, walking her down the hallway on her first day of kindergarten, because she was too scared to go alone. A father spends years protecting his child. Yet somehow, I hadn't been there when she needed me most. The thought nearly broke me. Then Michael quietly sat beside me. You blaming yourself again? I should have done more. You couldn't have known. I should have. He shook his head. No, Daniel, we're all experts after tragedy. But before tragedy, we're just people trying to love the ones who matter. I stared toward the setting sun. What if justice still isn't enough? Michael answered without looking at me. It never is. It doesn't bring them back. It simply makes sure evil doesn't get another chance. At that exact moment, Detective Hayes called. Her voice was urgent. Daniel, we've got a problem. My stomach dropped. What happened? Ryan's gone. What? He emptied his house this afternoon. His neighbors say he left less than an hour ago. His phone is off. His car hasn't crossed any toll cameras. She paused. Then said the words I had dreaded most. I think he knows we're coming. Ryan Whitmore had vanished. The words echoed through my mind as I stood frozen in Detective Rebecca Hayes's office. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the soft hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Finally, I broke the silence. How long ago? Rebecca looked down at her notes. Our best estimate is about 90 minutes. 90 minutes, I whispered. That was more than enough time to disappear. Michael folded his arms. Not if he's panicking. Rebecca nodded. Exactly, guilty people don't think clearly when their world starts collapsing. She pointed to a map spread across the conference table. He withdrew nearly $40,000 in cash yesterday. He emptied one safety deposit box. And she circled a small town near the state border. His cell phone briefly connected to a tower here before it went dark. My pulse quickened. He has a cabin there, I said. Rebecca looked up. You know about it? I almost forgot. Emma mentioned it years ago. Ryan inherited it from his grandfather. Michael grabbed his jacket. Then that's where we start. Within 30 minutes, a convoy of police vehicles raced toward the remote mountains. Rebecca insisted I stay behind. Daniel, this is a police operation. It's dangerous. I looked her straight in the eyes. For 4 years I've waited for this moment. I'm not getting in the way. But I'm not staying home either. She studied my face for several seconds. Finally, she sighed. You stay behind the perimeter. You do exactly what I say. I nodded. I promise. Rain began falling as we climbed the winding mountain road. Dark clouds swallowed the afternoon sun, the same kind of weather the police had blamed for Emma's so-called accident. The irony wasn't lost on me. When we reached the property, officers quietly surrounded the old wooden cabin. No lights, no movement, no sound except the rain hitting the roof. Rebecca spoke into her radio. Units in position? One by one, confirmations came back. East side ready, north side ready, south side secure. She took one deep breath. Move. The front door exploded inward. Police. Don't move. Several seconds passed. Nothing then. A loud crash came from upstairs. An officer shouted. He's running. A figure burst through the back of the cabin. Ryan. He looked nothing like the confident executive I'd remembered. His expensive clothes were soaked. His beard had grown in uneven patches. His eyes darted wildly in every direction. Fear had replaced arrogance. He sprinted toward the woods. Officers chased after him. I stood behind the police tape, my heart pounding so violently I could barely breathe. For 4 years, this man had slept peacefully while my family lived in nightmares. Now, he was the one running. The chase lasted less than 5 minutes. Ryan slipped on the rain-soaked hillside. He tumbled down a muddy slope before crashing into a fallen tree. By the time he struggled to stand, 3 officers already had their weapons trained on him. It's over. One officer shouted. Ryan looked around desperately. There was nowhere left to go. Slowly, he raised his hands. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, something inside me finally loosened. Not happiness. Not revenge. Relief. Rebecca approached him. Ryan Whitmore, you're under arrest for the murder of Emma Carter, financial fraud, destruction of evidence, and obstruction of justice. Ryan's face remained emotionless. Then, his eyes found mine across the clearing. For several long seconds we simply stared at each other. He gave a bitter smile. So, you figured it out. I stepped forward until I stood only a few feet away. My daughter figured it out. You just couldn't silence the truth forever. His smile disappeared. She should have stayed out of it. Those 6 words hit me harder than any punch ever could. Not because they hurt, but because they revealed exactly who he was. A man without remorse, without regret, without humanity. I looked him directly in the eyes. You didn't just steal her future. You stole 4 years from my family. You watched us bury her, knowing exactly what you'd done. For the first time, Ryan looked away. Rebecca nodded toward the officers. Take him. As they led him toward the patrol vehicle, he never looked back. The rain continued to fall, but somehow, for the first time in years, it no longer felt cold. The courthouse was silent. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful, the kind that carries the weight of years. 4 years of unanswered questions, 4 years of sleepless nights, 4 years of birthdays celebrated with an empty chair at the table. I sat beside Laura in the front row, holding her hand so tightly I wasn't sure whether I was comforting her or holding myself together. Across the courtroom, Ryan Whitmore sat between his attorneys. His expensive suits were gone. His confident smile had disappeared. The man who once believed he was untouchable now looked exhausted, not broken, just cornered. The prosecutor stood before the jury and carefully pieced together everything that had once seemed impossible to prove. Emma's financial investigation, the stolen company funds, Sophie's testimony, the shredded notebook pages, the hidden flash drive. The forensic analysis proving the brake line on Emma's car had been deliberately cut. One piece alone might have created doubt. Together, they painted the picture of a man who had murdered the woman he claimed to love, simply to protect his own future. Ryan's defense tried everything. They called it coincidence. They questioned witnesses. They attacked memories. They even suggested grief had caused our family to imagine connections that didn't exist. Then the prosecutor held up Emma's recovered notebook. The courtroom became so quiet you could hear someone cough in the back row. He read Emma's final entry aloud. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Laura buried her face in my shoulder. I closed my eyes. For the first time since her funeral, it felt like Emma herself was speaking. Not through memories, not through photographs, through the truth. The jury deliberated for nearly 10 hours. Every minute felt like another year. Finally, the courtroom doors opened. Everyone stood. The foreperson unfolded the verdict. We, the jury. I stopped breathing. Find the defendant, Ryan Whitmore, guilty. Guilty of first-degree murder. Guilty of financial fraud. Guilty of obstruction of justice. Laura collapsed into tears. I simply sat there, unable to move, unable to speak. For 4 years I had imagined this moment. I thought I would feel victorious. Instead, I felt strangely calm. Justice wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Steady, certain. The judge sentenced Ryan to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As officers placed handcuffs on him one final time, he looked toward me. For the first time, there was no arrogance, only regret. But regret wasn't enough. It never would be. He was led away without another word, and with that, the man who stole my daughter's future lost the rest of his own. Several months later, Laura and I stood beneath the old oak tree overlooking Emma's grave. The morning air was cool. Birds sang somewhere beyond the rows of headstones. I placed a bouquet of white lilies beside her name, her favorite flowers. Laura smiled through her tears. I think she'd be proud. I hope so, I answered softly. I spent years believing I had failed her. Laura took my hand. You didn't fail her. You never stopped fighting. I looked at Emma's photograph engraved into the granite. I couldn't save you, but I made sure your voice was finally heard. A gentle breeze moved through the cemetery. For just a moment, it felt like she was there, not in some supernatural way, but in the quiet peace that comes when the truth finally wins. Life didn't magically become perfect afterward. Grief never disappears. It simply becomes lighter to carry. Noah began visiting home more often. Laura smiled again. Not every day, but often enough to remind me that healing is possible. Sophie's testimony helped expose an entire network of financial corruption, protecting countless innocent people from becoming future victims. Detective Rebecca Hayes was promoted for reopening a case everyone else had given up on. And Michael, he still calls every Sunday just to ask if I'm keeping myself out of trouble. Some habits never change. People often ask me whether revenge brought me peace. My answer always surprises them. It wasn't revenge that healed me. It was justice. Revenge is driven by anger. Justice is driven by truth. One destroys, the other restores. I couldn't bring Emma back. No courtroom could ever return the birthdays we lost. No sentence could replace the empty chair at our dinner table. But justice gave my daughter something every victim deserves. Her voice. And it reminded everyone who tried to bury the truth that lies have an expiration date. Sooner or later, the truth always comes looking for you. If this story moved you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. If you were in Daniel's place, would you have given up after the case was closed, or would you have kept fighting for the truth? Until next time, remember this: the strongest revenge isn't hatred. It's making sure the truth wins in the end.